I'd learned to recognize her new voice over the past 6 months. It was lighter, more impatient, like every question I asked was an insult to her intelligence. Sarah had always been direct, but this was different. This was the voice of someone hiding something. She'd been coming home later from work, dressed a little too carefully for what she called overtime. Her phone was always tilted away from me now, screened down on every surface. When I asked how her day went, she gave me quick summaries and changed the subject faster than a politician avoiding scandal. "The Peterson account is moving forward," she'd say, not looking up from her plate. "Jim thinks we'll close by Friday." Jim, her boss. She'd been mentioning him a lot lately. Then the sleepovers started. "I'm moving in with my sister for a while," she announced one Thursday evening, already zipping a black suitcase I'd never seen before. The zipper made angry little sounds as she yanked it closed. Don't ask why. I stood in our bedroom doorway, watching her fold clothes with military precision. Sarah had never been this organized about anything, not even our wedding planning. She was shoving expensive blouses into corners, like she was packing for a getaway. "How long is a while?" I asked. "I don't know, David. I just need space to think." Space to think. That was rich. We lived in a 4-bedroom house in the suburbs. If she needed space to think, she could use the guest room, the basement, or the backyard shed I'd built for her yoga equipment that she'd used exactly twice. "Is everything okay with Lisa?" I tried. Her sister lived 20 minutes away in a cramped apartment above a bakery. "Lisa's fine. We just need to catch up on things." The way she said things made my stomach twist. It was the same tone she used when she talked about client meetings that ran until midnight, or weekend conferences that somehow never appeared on any company calendar I could find online. I didn't argue. I'd learned that arguing with Sarah lately was like trying to nail jelly to a wall, but the words landed wrong in my chest. If this was really about family bonding, she wouldn't be acting like she was escaping a crime scene. While she loaded her suitcase into her silver Honda, I made one quiet phone call from the kitchen. "Hey Lisa, it's David. Quick question. Is Sarah coming to stay with you tonight?" Lisa's voice sounded genuinely confused. "Stay with me? I haven't talked to her in weeks. I'm literally in Phoenix right now visiting Mom. Why?" I watched through the window as Sarah slammed her trunk shut. "No reason, just checking on family plans." "David, is everything okay? You sound weird." "Everything's fine. Have a good trip." I hung up and walked back to the living room. Sarah was standing by the front door with her purse and a small overnight bag, keys jingling in her hand like she couldn't wait to bolt. "I'll call you tomorrow," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Sure, tell Lisa I said hi." Something flickered across her face. Too quick to catch, but I saw it. "I will." She kissed my cheek, a dry peck that felt like a business transaction, and left. I listened to her car back out of the driveway, heard the engine fade down Maple Street, and then sat in the silence of our house that suddenly felt too big and too quiet. That night, I didn't confront her with Lisa's confusion. Instead, I checked what I'd been suspecting for weeks. Sarah had always been terrible with technology. She used the same password for everything, our wedding date followed by her maiden name, and she'd never bothered to turn off location sharing on our family plan. Her phone hadn't gone anywhere near Lisa's apartment. It had gone straight to the downtown business district, to a familiar glass office building where she worked. Then to Murphy's Bar across the street, then to the Riverside Inn, a hotel I'd never heard her mention in 15 years of marriage. At 11:47 p.m., according to the shared account, she'd ordered room service. I sat in my home office, staring at the little blue dot on my laptop screen that represented my wife's location, and felt something cold settle in my chest. It wasn't anger yet. It was clarity. The next morning, I got a text from Jake Morrison, a guy I barely knew who worked in Sarah's building. We'd met at exactly one company barbecue 2 years ago, and I couldn't even remember his last name. The message was short. "I'm sorry, man. It's been going on for a while." Attached was a blurry photo from what looked like an office party. Sarah was pressed close to a man in an expensive suit, laughing into his neck like she belonged there. Her hand was on his chest. His arm was around her waist. In the background, I could see other people from her office, and they were all looking at Sarah and this man like this wasn't the first time they'd seen this display. I zoomed in on the man's face, Jim Hendricks, her boss. The same Jim she'd been mentioning in those careful, casual ways for months. The story clicked into place like puzzle pieces I'd been ignoring. The late nights, the new clothes, the way she'd started going to the gym at 5 a.m., coming home showered and glowing. The sister wasn't a person. It was a cover story. A word she could throw at me to end any conversation before it started. I forwarded the photo to my personal email and deleted the message thread. Then I spent the day doing what I always did, working in my garage, fixing Mrs. Patterson's fence, installing new gutters for the Kowalskis down the street. I ran a small handyman business, the kind of work that kept my hands busy and my mind clear. But that evening, right on schedule, Sarah's text arrived. Settling in at Lisa's. Don't bother me tonight. Need space to process things. I stared at the message for a full minute. Then I typed back, calm and precise. Your sister, you say? Then find a job to pay off his debts. I hit send and set my phone on the kitchen counter. 7 minutes later, my phone exploded. The first call came at 6:23 p.m., then another at 6:24. By 6:30, I had 12 missed calls and a string of voice messages that started confused and escalated to panic. David, what are you talking about? Call me back. Who told you what? This is insane. Pick up your phone. Please answer. We need to talk about this right now. I let them pile up while I heated leftover pizza and cracked open a beer. The calm in my chest didn't change. If anything, it deepened. For the first time in months, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. The thing about being a handyman is that you hear things. You're invisible in people's houses, fixing their problems while they take phone calls and argue with their spouses and complain to their friends. You become part of the furniture, and people forget you have ears. 3 weeks ago, I'd been installing a new bathroom vanity for Margaret Chen, a paralegal who worked downtown. She'd been on the phone with a colleague, gossiping about office drama. Jim Hendricks is in deep with some loan sharks, she'd said, not bothering to lower her voice. Gambling debts. His wife doesn't know, but there are lawsuits coming. The partners are furious. At the time, I'd filed it away as background noise. Now it made perfect sense. Sarah had been moving money around our accounts for months, small transfers she'd explained as emergency funds and investment opportunities. I'd trusted her. She handled our finances, and I handled everything that required tools and sweat. But I wasn't stupid. I'd been tracking our joint accounts since the weird transfers started, and I'd noticed patterns. Money going out, money that never came back, amounts that matched Sarah's new wardrobe and her sudden interest in expensive restaurants I'd never been invited to. My phone rang again. This time I answered. David! Sarah's voice was high and tight. Where are you getting this information? Who have you been talking to? Does it matter? Of course it matters. Someone is lying to you. Jim doesn't have any debts. That's ridiculous. I took a slow sip of beer. Is that why you've been funneling money from our savings account? For his ridiculous non-debts? Silence. Long enough that I thought the call had dropped. I don't know what you're talking about, she said finally, but her voice had changed again. This wasn't the confident Sarah who'd been lying to me for months. This was someone realizing the mask had slipped in public. $17,000, Sarah, over 6 months. Small transfers you thought I wouldn't notice. That money was for what? Your sister's medical bills, your mother's car repairs, or for Jim's gambling problem? Another silence. I could hear traffic in the background, which was interesting since she was supposedly at Lisa's quiet apartment. I'm coming home, she said. We need to talk face to face. Take your time. I'll be here. She hung up. I finished my beer and went to my office to print some documents. Sarah burst through the front door 43 minutes later, which meant she'd been speeding. Her hair was messed up, her makeup smeared like she'd been crying or rubbing her face. She wasn't carrying the overnight bag she'd left with. David, please, let me explain. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a neat stack of papers in front of me. Bank statements, account transfers, screenshots of her location data from the past month, a printed copy of Jake's photo, and, on top of the stack, divorce papers I'd downloaded and filled out that afternoon. Explain what? I asked. That you've been lying about working late, that you've been stealing money from our joint account, that you've been screwing your boss in hotel rooms while telling me you're at your sister's house. She stared at the papers like they might catch fire. It's not what you think. What I think is that you're having an affair with Jim Hendricks, and you've been using our money to help him pay off gambling debts. What I think is that you've been planning to leave me for months, but you wanted to drain our accounts first. What I think is that you're a liar and a thief. Sarah's face crumpled. She tried to move toward me, arms outstretched like she wanted to hug me, to cry on my shoulder, to rewrite the last year in one breath. I stood up and stepped aside. You moved out, I said. You just didn't know it yet? David, please. I made mistakes, but I love you. I love our life together. You love our bank account. You love having a house you don't pay for and a husband who doesn't ask questions. But you don't love me. She was crying now, real tears that made her mascara run in black streaks. I'll end it with Jim. I'll quit my job. We can go to counseling. You'll end it because he's about to lose everything, and you don't want to go down with the ship. That's not the same as choosing me. I picked up a pen from the table and held it out to her. Sign the papers, Sarah. Make this easy for both of us. I won't sign anything. You can't just throw away 15 years of marriage. I'm not throwing it away. You already did that. I'm just cleaning up the mess. She grabbed the papers and tried to tear them, but I'd printed them on heavy stock. They bent but didn't rip. This is insane. You can't divorce me because of some rumors and coincidences. I pulled out my phone and showed her the location data. You were at the Riverside Inn last night. Room 237. You ordered salmon and wine at 11:47 p.m. Lisa was in Phoenix visiting your mother. So either you're having an affair or you've developed multiple personality disorder. Sarah stared at the screen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. How did you... You never changed your passwords. You never turned off location sharing. For someone who works in real estate, you're terrible at covering your tracks. She sank into a chair, still clutching the bent papers. David, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. What did you mean to happen? I don't know. Jim was going through a divorce, and he was so sad and lonely. We started talking after work, just as friends. Then we started having drinks. Then you started fucking him in hotel rooms and stealing money from our accounts to pay his debts. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Don't be crude. Crude? You want to talk about crude? Crude is lying to your husband's face for 6 months. Crude is stealing money and calling it emergency funds. Crude is telling me you're staying with your sister when you're actually playing house with your boss. I sat back down and folded my hands on the table. Here's what's going to happen, Sarah. You're going to sign these papers, and we're going to file for divorce. You can keep whatever money you have left in your personal account, but you're not getting half of anything else. You forfeited that when you started stealing from our joint account. You can't prove I stole anything. That money was mine too. Actually, I can prove it. I have records of every transfer, and I have documentation of where that money went. Jim's lawyer, his bookie, his creditors. You want to explain that to a judge? Sarah's face went white. How do you know about his creditors? I know a lot of things, Sarah. I know Jim owes money to people who don't send polite reminder letters. I know his wife left him because she found out about the gambling. I know the partners at your firm are looking for reasons to fire him. And I know you've been stupid enough to tie yourself to a sinking ship. She was quiet for a long time, staring at the papers in her hands. When she finally looked up, her eyes were red but clear. What if I don't sign? Then I file anyway, and I make sure everyone knows exactly why. Your family, your friends, your coworkers. I'll tell them about the affair and the money and the lies. I'll make sure Jim's wife gets copies of all the hotel receipts. I'll make sure the partners at your firm know their employee has been embezzling money to pay gambling debts. That's blackmail. That's consequences. Sarah signed the papers at 9:17 p.m., her signature shaky but legible. She didn't say another word, just grabbed her purse and left. I heard her car start, then fade down the street again. This time, I didn't bother checking where she went. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Tom Bradley, a guy I'd known since high school who specialized in messy divorces. David, buddy, he said when I explained the situation, you've got everything documented, bank records, location data, proof of the affair, everything. And she signed the papers voluntarily? She had motivation to cooperate, Tom laughed. I bet she did. Okay, I'll file these today. With this much evidence, she won't contest it. Her lawyer will tell her to take whatever deal we offer and disappear quietly. What about the money she transferred? We can get most of it back. Judges don't like it when spouses drain joint accounts for affairs. You might not get every penny, but you'll get enough to hurt. I hung up feeling lighter than I had in months. Then I made coffee and started my day the way I always did, checking my work schedule and loading tools into my truck. But the peace didn't last long. At 10:30 a.m., while I was replacing a garbage disposal for the Hendersons, my phone started buzzing with texts from people I hadn't heard from in months. Mike Russo. Dude, is it true about you and Sarah? Jenny heard something at the grocery store. Lisa Thompson. David, I'm so sorry. If you need anything, call me. Even my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, knocked on the Hendersons' door to ask if I was okay. Small towns are like that. News travels faster than gossip, and gossip travels faster than light. By lunch, I had 17 messages and 6 missed calls. Most were supportive, but a few made my stomach turn. The worst was from Kevin Walsh, my former best friend and Sarah's college buddy. Heard you're spreading lies about Sarah. That's pretty low, even for you. I called him back immediately. Kevin, what the hell are you talking about? Sarah called Jenny this morning, crying. She said you're making up stories about her having an affair because you want to divorce her and keep all the money. Jenny was Kevin's wife, and she'd been Sarah's maid of honor at our wedding. They'd been close for years, closer than Sarah and I had been lately. Sarah called Jenny and said, "What, exactly?" "That you hired some private investigator to follow her around and make up evidence. That you're trying to destroy her reputation because you're having a midlife crisis." I sat in my truck, staring at the Hendersons' house, and felt anger build in my chest like steam in a pressure cooker. "Kevin, I have bank records showing she stole $17,000 from our joint account. I have location data showing she's been lying about where she spends her nights. I have photos of her with her boss at office parties, looking like they're married to each other instead of other people. Photos can be faked. Location data can't. Bank records can't. Look, man, I've known Sarah longer than you have. She's not the type to cheat. Maybe she moved some money around, but that doesn't mean she's having an affair. You've known her longer than I have? Kevin, I've been married to her for 15 years. And I've been her friend for 20. She was always loyal, always honest. If she's acting weird, maybe it's because you've been acting weird." I felt something snap in my chest. Acting weird how? "Jenny says Sarah's been telling her for months that you've been distant and angry, that you've been working all the time and ignoring her, that you've been checking up on her like you don't trust her. I've been checking up on her because she's been lying to me. Or maybe she's been pulling away because you've been suffocating her." I hung up on him. Then I sat in my truck for 10 minutes, hands shaking with rage. This was Sarah's next move. She couldn't deny the evidence, so she was changing the narrative, making me the villain, making herself the victim of a controlling husband who'd driven her away with suspicion and neglect. It was brilliant, actually, and it was working. Over the next 3 days, I lost 2 more friends to Sarah's version of events. Mark Chen, who'd been my poker buddy for 5 years, stopped returning my calls. Lisa Thompson, who'd initially offered support, sent a text saying she didn't want to get involved in marital drama. But the worst was yet to come. On Friday, I got a call from my biggest client, Patricia Donovan, who owned 3 rental properties I maintained. "David, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to find someone else for the maintenance work." "Mrs. Donovan, did I do something wrong? Is there a problem with my work?" "Your work is fine, dear. It's just, well, I heard about your situation with Sarah, and I don't feel comfortable having someone in my properties who might be unstable." "Unstable? I heard you've been following her around, taking pictures, making accusations. That sounds like stalking behavior to me." I closed my eyes and counted to 10. "Mrs. Donovan, Sarah has been having an affair with her boss and stealing money from our joint account. I have documentation of everything. I'm not stalking anyone." "I'm sure you believe that, dear. But Sarah seems like such a sweet girl. I just can't imagine her doing those things." After she hung up, I sat in my garage and stared at my tools. In 3 days, Sarah had managed to turn half our social circle against me and cost me my biggest client. She was rewriting history, making me the bad guy, and people were buying it because they liked her better than they liked me. Sarah had always been more social, more charming, better at making friends and keeping them. I was the quiet one, the guy who fixed things and stayed in the background. In a popularity contest, she'd win every time, but I wasn't done fighting. That weekend, I did something I'd never done before. I fought back. I started with Kevin and Jenny Walsh. Saturday morning, I drove to their house with a folder full of documents and my laptop. "Kevin, I need 5 minutes of your time." He opened the door reluctantly, still in his pajamas and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "David, I don't think this is a good idea." 5 minutes, then I'll leave you alone forever." Jenny appeared behind him, arms crossed, looking at me like I was a door-to-door salesman. "David, we really don't want to get in the middle of this." "I'm not asking you to get in the middle. I'm asking you to look at facts." I opened my laptop on their kitchen table and showed them the location data. Sarah's phone at the Riverside Inn, night after night, the timestamps, the room service orders. "She told you she was staying with her sister?" I said. "Her sister was in Phoenix. So where was Sarah?" Kevin stared at the screen, his face changing. This could be fake. I pulled out the bank statements. $17,000 transferred to accounts belonging to James Hendricks and his creditors. "You want to call the bank and verify these account numbers?" Jenny looked at the papers, then at Kevin, then back at me. "David, why would Sarah steal money for her boss?" "Because she's sleeping with him, and he owes money to dangerous people." I showed them the photo Jake had sent me, Sarah and Jim at the office party, looking like lovers instead of colleagues. "This is from 2 months ago," I said. "Does this look like a professional relationship to you?" The room was quiet, except for the hum of their refrigerator. Kevin and Jenny exchanged glances, the kind of wordless communication that comes from years of marriage. "Why didn't you show us this before?" Jenny asked finally. "Because I hoped I was wrong, because I wanted to handle it privately, because I didn't think my wife would lie to our friends about me being abusive and controlling." Kevin rubbed his face. "She didn't say abusive. She said you were acting paranoid and checking up on her." "I was checking up on her because she was lying to me every day. Look at this data, Kevin. Look at these bank records. Was I paranoid, or was I right?" They looked. They really looked, going through every document, every screenshot, every piece of evidence I'd collected. When they finished, Jenny was crying. "I'm so sorry, David." She seemed so upset, so scared. I believed her. "She's good at lying," I said. "She had me fooled for months." Kevin shook his head. "I can't believe she made us think you were the problem." "She's protecting herself. When people get caught, they either confess or they attack. Sarah's attacking." I packed up my documents and headed for the door. "I'm not asking you to choose sides. I'm just asking you to know the truth." That afternoon, I did the same thing with Mark Chen and Lisa Thompson. I showed them the evidence, explained the timeline, and let them draw their own conclusions. By Sunday evening, the narrative had started to shift. Kevin called to apologize. Jenny sent a text saying she felt terrible for doubting me. Mark invited me for poker the following Friday, but I wasn't satisfied with just getting my friends back. Sarah had cost me a client and tried to destroy my reputation. It was time to return the favor. Monday morning, I called Patricia Donovan and asked for a meeting. "Mrs. Donovan, I understand your concerns about hiring someone who might be unstable. I'd like to show you some documents that might change your perspective." We met at a coffee shop downtown, and I walked her through the same evidence I'd shown my friends. Bank records, location data, photos, everything neat and organized like a business presentation. "Good Lord," she said when I finished. "That poor girl has been lying to everyone." "I'm not asking you to judge Sarah," I said. "I'm just asking you to judge me based on facts instead of rumors." She hired me back on the spot and gave me a bonus for the inconvenience. But I still wasn't done. Tuesday afternoon, I made a call to Margaret Chen, the paralegal who'd mentioned Jim's gambling debts. "Margaret, it's David Morrison. I installed your bathroom vanity a few weeks ago." "Oh, hi, David. How can I help you?" "You mentioned that Jim Hendricks was having financial problems. I have some information that might interest you and your colleagues." I didn't give her details over the phone, but I suggested she might want to look into whether any employees were helping Jim with his debt problems using company resources. Wednesday morning, Sarah called me for the first time since she'd signed the divorce papers. "David, what did you do?" Her voice was different again. Not angry, not sad, but panicked. "What are you talking about?" "Someone at my office has been asking questions about Jim and me, about money transfers and expense reports. They're doing some kind of internal investigation." "Sounds like a human resources issue. Nothing to do with me." "Don't lie to me. I know you called someone." "Sarah, you're divorcing me. Your work problems aren't my responsibility anymore." "They're saying Jim might get fired. They're saying I might get fired too." "Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to steal money and sleep with your boss." She hung up on me. I went back to work, installing new windows for the Kowalskis, and felt something like peace settle in my chest. By Thursday, the gossip mill had shifted completely. People were talking about Sarah and Jim's affair, about the money, about the lies. The story had gotten bigger and more dramatic with each telling, the way stories do in small towns. Mrs. Patterson knocked on my door that evening with a casserole and an apology. "David, dear, I owe you an apology. I heard some terrible rumors about you, but now I'm hearing the real story. That wife of yours has some nerve, carrying on like that." "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. I appreciate the casserole." "You're better off without her, if you ask me. A man needs a woman he can trust." Friday morning, Tom Bradley called with an update. "David, you're not going to believe this. Sarah's lawyer wants to settle immediately. No contest, no negotiation. She'll take her personal belongings and her car, and that's it." "What changed?" "Word is she's about to lose her job. Her and her boyfriend both. Apparently there's some kind of investigation into financial irregularities at their firm. She can't afford to fight you in court if she's unemployed." "What about the money she transferred?" "We'll get most of it back. She's in no position to argue." I hung up and sat in my kitchen, looking around at the house Sarah and I had shared for 8 years. It felt bigger now, quieter, but not empty. It felt like mine. That evening, Kevin and Jenny came over with pizza and beer. We didn't talk about Sarah or Jim or the divorce. We talked about normal things, work and weather and the Cubs' chances this season. It felt like the first normal conversation I'd had in months. But I knew this wasn't over. Sarah might be beaten, but she wasn't gone. And people like Sarah don't disappear quietly when they lose. They make noise. They make trouble. I was right to be cautious. The trouble came on a Tuesday, 2 weeks later, in the form of a phone call from my daughter's school. "Mr. Morrison, this is Principal Anderson. We need you to come in immediately. There's been an incident involving Emma." Emma was my 17-year-old daughter from my first marriage, who lived with her mother in the next town over but went to school in our district. She was a good kid, honor roll, soccer team, college-bound, and she'd never been in trouble in her life. I dropped everything and drove to the school, my mind racing through possibilities. Drugs, fighting, academic dishonesty. The reality was worse. "Mr. Morrison," Principal Anderson said when I arrived at his office, "Emma got into a physical altercation with another student today. She's been suspended for 3 days." Emma was sitting in a chair next to his desk, her face red and tear-streaked, her knuckles scraped. She looked up when I came in, and I could see she was furious and embarrassed in equal measure. "What happened?" I asked. "Tell your father what you told me," Principal Anderson said. Emma wiped her nose with a tissue. "Madison Parker was saying things about you, about how you stalked Sarah and made up lies about her having an affair. She said you were crazy and dangerous and that everyone knew it." My stomach dropped. Madison Parker was the daughter of one of Sarah's co-workers. "So you hit her?" "I told her to stop lying about you. She said Sarah was a victim and you were an abuser and that's why she left. I told her Sarah was a cheater and a thief. She called me a liar, so I pushed her. And then? And then she pushed me back. And then I punched her." Principal Anderson cleared his throat. "Emma, why don't you wait in the outer office while I talk to your father?" When Emma left, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. "David, I've known Emma since she was in kindergarten. This is completely out of character for her. But she can't go around hitting people because they say things she doesn't like." "I understand. What's the suspension policy?" 3 days, starting tomorrow. But there's something else. Madison's parents want to file assault charges." I felt anger rise in my chest like floodwater. "Assault charges? They're both 17 years old, and it was a schoolyard fight." "I know. I think they're overreacting. But they're saying Emma has been influenced by your violent tendencies, and that this is a pattern of behavior." "What violent tendencies?" "They're claiming you've been stalking and harassing Sarah Morrison. They want to use this incident to build a case that you're a dangerous influence on your daughter." I sat there for a moment, processing the implications. Sarah wasn't just trying to destroy my reputation anymore. She was trying to destroy my relationship with my daughter. "Principal Anderson, do you have a few minutes? I'd like to show you some documents." I'd started carrying copies of the evidence with me, just in case. I showed him the bank records, the location data, the photos. I explained the timeline, the lies, the money transfers. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. "David, this puts things in a different perspective, but I still can't excuse Emma hitting another student." "I'm not asking you to excuse it. I'm asking you to understand why it happened. The Parkers are saying they want to involve the police. If they do, this could get complicated for you and Emma both." I left the school with Emma, who was quiet and sullen in the passenger seat of my truck. "Dad, I'm sorry," she said finally. I know I shouldn't have hit her, but she was saying awful things about you, and I knew they weren't true." "How did you know they weren't true?" "Because you're not that kind of person, and because Mom told me what really happened." Emma's mother, Linda, was my first wife. We'd divorced amicably when Emma was 3, and we'd maintained a good co-parenting relationship for 14 years. "What did your mom say?" "That Sarah called her last week, crying and asking for support. Mom listened to her story, then called you to get your side. When you showed her the evidence, Mom told Sarah never to call her again." I felt a surge of gratitude toward Linda, who'd always been fair and rational, even when our marriage was falling apart. "Emma, I need you to understand something. Sarah is trying to make me look like the bad guy because she got caught doing bad things. People are going to believe her because she's good at lying and because she's playing the victim. You can't solve that problem by hitting people. So what do? We tell the truth. We show people evidence. And we let them make up their own minds." That evening, I called Tom Bradley and explained the situation with the Parkers. "David, this is serious. If they file assault charges against Emma and claim it's because of your influence, it could affect the divorce settlement. It could affect your custody rights. What do you recommend?" "We need to get ahead of this. I'm going to call the Parkers' lawyer and arrange a meeting. We'll show them the same evidence you've been showing everyone else. Once they understand what really happened with Sarah, they'll back down. And if they don't, then we fight. But let's try the reasonable approach first." The meeting was scheduled for Friday afternoon at Tom's office. The Parkers brought their lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman who looked like she ate small-town handymen for breakfast. I brought my evidence. For an hour, we laid out the case. Bank records, location data, photos, testimony from witnesses who'd seen Sarah and Jim together, the timeline of lies, the money transfers, the elaborate deception. When we finished, Madison's mother was crying. "I had no idea," she said. "Sarah seemed so upset, so believable. I thought you were the one who'd done something wrong." Her husband was angrier. "So our daughter has been repeating lies at school, making herself look like an idiot?" Their lawyer was taking notes. "Mr. Morrison, this evidence is quite compelling, but it doesn't change the fact that your daughter assaulted my client's daughter." "Your client's daughter was repeating defamatory statements about my client," Tom said smoothly. "Statements that have now been proven false. If anyone should be worried about legal action, it's the people who've been spreading these lies." The room got very quiet. "What are you saying?" the Parkers' lawyer asked. "I'm saying my client has been the victim of a systematic campaign of defamation. His wife has been telling people he's abusive, controlling, and unstable. These statements have cost him friendships, business relationships, and now they're affecting his relationship with his daughter. If you want to talk about legal action, let's talk about a defamation lawsuit against everyone who's been spreading these lies." The Parkers exchanged glances. Their lawyer closed her notebook. "Perhaps we can work something out," she said. By the end of the meeting, the assault charges were off the table. The Parkers agreed to have Madison apologize to Emma for spreading false information. In exchange, Emma would write a formal apology for the physical altercation. It was a fair resolution, but I wasn't satisfied. Sarah had tried to use my own daughter against me, and that crossed a line I didn't even know I had. That weekend, I made a decision that would have consequences I couldn't foresee. I decided to end this once and for all. Monday morning, I did something that went against every instinct I'd developed in 20 years of trying to avoid drama. I called Sarah directly. "We need to talk," I said when she answered. "David, I don't think that's a good idea." My lawyer said, "Your lawyer can listen in if you want, but we're going to have a conversation face to face, and we're going to settle this." "I don't have anything to say to you." "You dragged my daughter into this mess. You tried to turn her classmates against her by spreading lies about me. That stops now." There was a long pause. "I never said anything about Emma." "You didn't have to say anything about Emma? You said things about me, and kids at her school repeated them, and she ended up in a fight defending my reputation, a fight that could have gotten her arrested. That's not my fault. It's completely your fault. You started a whisper campaign to make me look like an abuser and a stalker. You turned our friends against me. You cost me business, and now it's affecting my relationship with my daughter. I never called you an abuser. You called me controlling and paranoid and unstable. You told people I was following you around and making up evidence. You made yourself the victim and me the villain. And people believed you because you're better at lying than I am at telling the truth." Another pause. I could hear office noise in the background, phones ringing, people talking. "What do you want, David?" "I want you to fix this. I want you to call everyone you lied to and tell them the truth. I want you to admit you had an affair and stole money and made up stories about me to cover your tracks." "I'm not going to do that." "Then I'm going to do it for you." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm done being quiet about this. I'm done letting you control the narrative. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what happened and exactly who you are." "David, don't do anything stupid." "Stupid would be letting you get away with this." I hung up and spent the rest of the day making a plan. That evening, I called Kevin Walsh. "Kevin, I need a favor. You still have connections at the newspaper, right?" Kevin had worked at the local paper for 5 years before switching to insurance. He still knew people in the newsroom. "Yeah, why?" "I want to tell my story, the real story, all of it." "David, are you sure that's a good idea? The divorce is almost final. Why stir up more drama?" "Because Sarah tried to use my daughter against me. Because she's still out there telling people I'm dangerous and unstable. Because I'm tired of being the villain in her story." Kevin was quiet for a moment. "What kind of story are we talking about?" "The truth? An affair, financial fraud, a systematic campaign of lies and manipulation. I have documentation for everything." That's a pretty serious accusation." "It's not an accusation. It's a fact pattern." "Let me make some calls." Wednesday afternoon, I met with Rebecca Martinez, a reporter who specialized in local interest stories. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 30, with sharp eyes and a digital recorder that she set on the table between us like a challenge. Mr. Morrison, Kevin Walsh says you have a story about fraud and defamation. Can you walk me through what happened? For 2 hours, I told her everything. The affair, the money transfers, the lies, the whisper campaign. I showed her documents, bank records, location data. I explained how Sarah had tried to destroy my reputation and turn our friends against me. This is quite a story, Rebecca said when I finished, but it's also quite personal. Why do you want this in the newspaper? Because lies spread faster than truth. Because people are still repeating Sarah's version of events. Because my daughter shouldn't have to defend me against false accusations at school. What's your goal here? What do you want to happen? I want people to know the truth. I want Sarah to face consequences for what she's done, and I want other people to recognize the signs if this happens to them. Rebecca nodded, still taking notes. I'll need to verify some of these documents, and I'll need to contact Sarah for comment. That's fine. Everything I've shown you is verifiable. One more question. Are you concerned about how this might affect your daughter, having her family's private business in the newspaper? I'd thought about this. Emma was 17, almost 18. In a few months, she'd be in college, away from the gossip and drama of small-town life. My daughter has already been affected by this. Her classmates think her father is an abuser because her stepmother is a liar. I'd rather have the truth in print than lies in whispers. The story ran the following Sunday, front page of the local section. The headline was, Local Man Documents Wife's Affair, Financial Fraud. It was fair, factual, and devastating. Rebecca had done her homework. She'd verified the bank records, confirmed the timeline, even spoken to Jake Morrison about the office party photos. She'd contacted Sarah for comment, but Sarah had declined to be interviewed. The story included quotes from Kevin Walsh and Jenny Walsh about how they'd initially believed Sarah's version of events, then changed their minds when shown evidence. It included a statement from Tom Bradley about the legal proceedings. It even included a comment from Principal Anderson about how false rumors had affected students at the high school. By Monday morning, my phone was ringing constantly. Some calls were supportive, people apologizing for believing Sarah's lies, people sharing their own stories of betrayal and manipulation. Some were critical, people who thought I should have kept my private business private. But the most interesting call came from Margaret Chen, the paralegal. David, I saw the article in the paper. I thought you should know. Jim Hendricks was fired on Friday. They found evidence that he'd been using company resources for personal business, including having Sarah do work on his personal legal problems during company time. What about Sarah? She resigned before they could fire her. Word is she's leaving town. Tuesday afternoon, Tom Bradley called with the final divorce decree. It's done, David. She signed everything, no contest. You keep the house, the business, and most of the joint assets. She gets her car and her personal belongings. What about the money she transferred? We recovered $14,000 of the $17,000. The rest was already spent, but we got most of it back. And the defamation issue? She agreed to a non-disclosure clause. She can't make any more public statements about you or the marriage. If she does, she'll owe you damages. I hung up and sat in my kitchen, looking around at the house that was now entirely mine. It felt different. Not just quieter, but cleaner somehow, like a stain had been scrubbed away. That evening, Emma came over for dinner. She'd been staying with me more often since the incident at school, and her mother was supportive of the arrangement. Dad, I read the article, she said over pizza. I'm proud of you for telling the truth. Are you okay with everyone knowing our business? I'm okay with everyone knowing the real story instead of Sarah's fake story. We ate in comfortable silence for a while, then Emma asked the question I'd been dreading. Do you think you'll ever get married again? I thought about it. Maybe, but if I do, it'll be to someone who tells the truth. How will you know? I'll pay attention. I'll watch for the little lies, the small deceptions, the times when someone's story doesn't add up. I won't ignore red flags just because I want to believe someone. That sounds lonely. Lonelier than being married to someone who lies to you every day? I don't think so. The following week, I got a letter in the mail with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a message written in Sarah's handwriting. You destroyed my life. I hope you're happy. I showed it to Tom Bradley, who added it to the file as a potential violation of the non-disclosure agreement. Then I threw it away and went back to work. Over the next month, life slowly returned to normal. I rebuilt relationships with clients who dropped me during the drama. I reconnected with friends who'd initially believed Sarah's lies. I took on new projects, made new business contacts, and started planning home improvements I'd been putting off for years. Emma decided to spend her senior year living with me instead of her mother. She said she liked the quiet, and she liked not having to worry about drama and gossip. Plus, she said, You're a better cook than Mom. That wasn't true, but I appreciated the sentiment. 3 months after the divorce was final, I ran into Jenny Walsh at the grocery store. David, how are you doing? I'm good, really good. I owe you another apology. Kevin and I should have known better than to believe Sarah's story without hearing your side. You believed your friend. That's natural. Still, we should have been smarter. Sarah was always good at making herself the center of attention, even in college. I guess we just never thought about what that meant for the people around her. What do you mean? She always had drama in her life, always had stories about people who'd wronged her or betrayed her or misunderstood her. We thought it was bad luck. Now I think maybe she created the drama. I thought about that conversation for days afterward. Sarah had always been the victim in her own stories, the employee whose boss didn't appreciate her, the friend whose friends were jealous of her, the wife whose husband didn't understand her. I'd never questioned those stories because I loved her and wanted to support her. But looking back, I could see the pattern Jenny was talking about. Sarah didn't just attract drama, she created it, fed on it, used it to justify her choices and manipulate the people around her. Sarah's affair with Jim wasn't a mistake. It was her pattern, casting herself as victim, others as villains. I'd played the role too long, ignoring warnings because I wanted to believe in us. Now she's gone, rewriting her story in a new city. I kept the house, business, daughter, reputation, and my instincts. 6 months later, a client shared her own tale of a charming liar who demanded blind trust. Trust is earned, I said. She nodded, recognizing the script. That evening, with Emma doing homework and friends inviting me to poker, I raised a beer to the sunset. Here's to truth, and never ignoring red flags again. Life is simple, honest, mine.